Around 250 AD, down on the Yucatan Peninsula, the Mayan civilizations was just starting their golden age. They had erected roughly 40 cities up to this point, and had developed systems of both mathematics and astrology. The golden age of the Maya would last up to around 900 AD, and at this point, much of their land and cities would actually be largely abandoned. And so much of our media harkens back to these lost cultures, and our subject today is actually no different. Because today, traveler, I want to talk about Pitfall, the Mayan adventure.
Whoa!
So, Pitfall the Mayan Adventure was developed in-house at Activision and released in 1994 for a plethora of consoles. And today in particular, we'll be talking about the Super Nintendo version only. Now, the Super Nintendo version was developed by Redline Games, who I really couldn't find anything out about, but Redline Studios did have assistance from, at the time, what was known as Cygnus Software. Now, Cygnus Software is now known as Mountain King Studios, but regardless, the two of them were actually helping to work on this platformer. Now, Pitfall the Mayan Adventure was supposed to carry on the series' themes of high adventure, and I think the Mayan jungle is a great backdrop for this retreading of this very adventure-oriented series. They decided instead of having Pitfall Harry take up his old hat again, instead it's actually going to be his son, Harry Jr., who then in turn would actually take up the mantle and set out for an expedition on his own, setting out for the Mayan jungle out on the Yucatan Peninsula. And upon hearing this, Harry Sr. goes, okay, I'm just gonna come out of retirement and come along with you. So, father and son together, journeying to the lost temple of Wahakhtun. Now, with Harry Sr. captured, it's up to Junior to not only continue their expedition alone, but now it's a rescue mission to find his father. So, he now continues through the Mayan Empire alone. Our journey will begin in the Siba jungle, but before we take any more steps, let's take stock and see just exactly what we've got on us to help weather what will come ahead. So Harry Jr. brought with him a whip he uses like a sling, and can actually whip stones at enemies, and this is a very useful weapon. It hits most enemies at most ranges, and is very, very helpful to keep enemies at bay. And if you really want to, you could charge it up for more damage, but this isn't as practical as it sounds, because most enemies only take a few stones to go down, and most enemies you'd want to use the charge shot on are usually faster than you. So this doesn't usually get used very often. But if enemies get too close, you could also use this whip like a whip and hit enemies directly in front of you. Aside from the whip and stones, he also has a Mayan boomerang. And this boomerang's actually got a lot of coverage and does a decent amount of damage. While its use cases I would say are a little more limited, it does have its uses and is a little more niche, but can help you in a jam. The thing to remember about the boomerang though is, at random chances, it seems to just allow you to take it back. It'll hover in midair for a place and allow you to just pick it back up. So when you throw one, be ready to just grab it back. Now last, but most certainly not least, we have the exploding stones of Pakao. Now these stones harken back to the legend that Pakao was a spacefaring man, as depicted on his tomb, and undoubtedly he used these stones to project himself into the air, to journey among the stars once more. Or at least, that's how the pseudoscience theory goes. No kidding. Real pseudoscience theory that I found while researching this game. Honestly, really took me by surprise. So, making our way through the first level, pretty basic enough. There's some light platforming to prepare you for what's to come, and there's some vine swinging, some pitfall leaping, and just general monkey business. Aside from all the enemies and hazards, there's also a bevy of treasure. There's gold coins, there's bars of silver and gold, there's diamond rings, hidden everywhere. This area is enriched with, well, riches. And for every 50 points of treasure you collect, the game will actually give you another continue. Which, if you even only know where some of the treasure is hidden, you are never going to lose this game to a game over. You will always have enough continues. Even after only getting through partway through the game, my continue screen looked like this. I had 9 continues, each offering their own set of lives, and I'll be honest, defeat was never an option with the abundance of treasure there is. But anyway, so as we're swinging on through the latter half of the first level, you'd find by this point that Harry's pretty agile. He climbs vines, he bounces on webs, he also uses these hilarious bungee plants, and in some areas he even grabs a sling and he uses it like a zip line, and he builds up speed as he traverses the level, and... That's not gonna get old, is it? But, gotta say, jungle backgrounds and the assets here look really good. And I'll be honest, this is a theme we're gonna see throughout the entire game. For the art direction for this game is really solid. And this even extends to Harry himself, who has an impressive array of animations. I mean, he's incredibly expressive. He's got various animations that deal with very specific moments, like when he trips over an enemy who's smaller than him, like rats or spiders. Yeah, he has like specific animations for those, and I thought it's really cool. This art direction and art style actually comes as a little surprise when I started digging into it, because I found out that Croyer Animation was actually the studio responsible for all these animations and art assets, at least for the original hand-drawn versions. Now, Croyer Animation was actually responsible for the 1992 movie Fern Gully. And Fern Gully had released to moderate acclaim, but featured some really great animation and background art. And this is evident all throughout Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure. Honestly, they did a super job, and I'm really happy with it. So, we made our way through the first stage, and we got a gist on how the rest of the game's gonna be. We're going to be fighting our first of only a handful of bosses this game throws at you. Most levels will just end when you reach the end, but some levels will end off with a boss fight, and they seem to follow the same motif, where this one, the boss of level 1, is a jaguar. And he's fast, he's really hard to read if you've never fought him before, and he might be your first death. If you didn't die to one of the instant death hazards like the Pitfalls, you just might die to him. Dodging him is not entirely easy. However, killing him is simple. If you haven't used any of your exploding stones up to this point, you just throw him with reckless abandon and he'll fall either way. So with enough persistence and maybe a little dodging here and there, you'll make it through just fine and we can continue down the trail. Because our next destination, we're going
to Shibalba!
Oh, great.
And here is where some of the cracks begin to show in the game's controls. Now, while we are contending with literal slippery rocks, it's in some of those moments where the controls feel a little too imprecise and can feel kind of floaty. Harry feels lighter than he should, and this can lead to some panicky moments, especially later. But if you're careful, if you keep your wits on you, and you very gingerly go up the falls, you'll definitely avoid plunging into the afterlife these falls are named after. And you can be careful, clear up into the point where you discover the Mayan chili pepper. At this point, you can figure out you can jump clean to the moon, and you'll abandon all caution as you jump clean to find an alternate exit hidden in the top right-hand corner, and just as quick as you entered, you'll be out with an extra life in tow. Now, after we leapt up the falls, we get to move on to the Tazamule Mines. This portion of the game is where it starts to offer your first branching and alternate paths, and these branching paths can be sometimes really hard to see, sometimes really hard to spot, and aren't very well communicated, which I get that's kind of the point of a secret path, but even still, most of these are how would I have known that kind of path. But for the most part, they offer just extra treasure, maybe some one-ups, some extra munition for some of your tools. For the most part, they're harmless. But this is actually the first level where we'll find one of the 7 stone tablets hidden throughout the game. Each tablet has a letter adorned upon it, and surprise, surprise, it spells Pitfall. Long story short, these, though, are required for a completionist ending. And these are actually rather well hidden sometimes. But for the most part, in this stage, it's behind an optional door, behind an exploding barrel. Either way, this level also features some other more environmental things, like I mentioned earlier, the exploding barrels. You have some pushable minecarts. You have a rideable minecart. And for the most part, that's all really cool. This place, though, is also full of a large amount of enemies. And I mean, we're talking like bats, rats, and spiders so damn big you'd call the EDF.
To take down giant insects who came from outer space, we now head underground for their path we must retrace.
Good God! That's a hell of a monster!
We'll turn you into Swiss cheese!
Stay strong! Illegal access to No 2. Somebody is starting up Spritefall!
The mission was successful. All units, come on home. You did it.
Our friends were all killed yesterday, as were our families. Today we may not make it facing these atrocities. We'll never drop our banner despite our casualties. The EDF deploys.
And here is where you'll notice that these smaller enemies actually get really annoying because they respawn after you kill them. As soon as their origin point moves off screen, that's fair game for them to come back. So, for the most part, this can be circumvented because you're not backtracking a lot, but in some moments, like right here, I had just crawled into this little dead end to get some treasure. But now that I'm crawling back out, I have to contend with this bat again. And there's no good way to avoid taking damage. And this is kind of a common theme, where damage is damn near unavoidable and can stack up quickly, leading to clearing levels with a lot of accrued damage and being very weak when you enter a new area. Thankfully, healing is just available enough to not put too much strain on you, but just scant enough that you never feel like you always have the upper hand. Now, healing in most games comes in the form of like, oh, you know, med kits and hearts, and Pitfall is no different. Still use the heart motif. Only this time it's a little more realistic. The hearts are still beating, and in some cases still bleeding. And these bleeding hearts, if you find them, will actually restore your health in its entirety. They're hidden throughout the levels, and sometimes are hard to find, sometimes aren't, sometimes are just given to you, but these are still incredibly helpful nonetheless when you find them. Honestly, I kind of think the bleeding heart motif is actually a really cool idea, seeing the theming of, like, you know, Mayan sacrifice, and I think is actually a pretty ballsy move considering their ESRB E rating. So, back to Tazamule, as we're kind of making our way through, go through a small section where you have to climb on these ropes, and if these rats come in contact with you, they'll knock you off the ropes. It's pretty annoying, but it's doable. It just takes maybe a couple attempts if you haven't done this before. And either way, after that, throw a nice switch, find some hidden exploding stones, and leap your way over a bunch of charging, oncoming minecarts. And then you just walk right out, just like the falls. So, with the mines navigated, we find ourselves in the lost city of Copan. Huh. Hey, that funny little guy up there looks familiar. Why does he look so familiar? Huh. Strange. Yeah, anyhow, though, so the Lost City starts to show off some of the stronger enemies you'll come across. Enemies that take more than one hit, enemies that are a little tankier. Now, these enemies are usually like these gargoyles, as the manual outlines them. It calls them gargoyles. I probably would have called them like living statues or like sentries or something like that. You'll also come across hawks and skeletal warriors of Zakala, who I swear just stand there and take it. Some of them move, some of them don't. Either way, these enemies are not really that challenging. They just take a few more hits. The only enemies here that will pose a threat to you are definitely the hawks and the gargoyles who throw their axes. Now, if you take a slightly alternate route where you can make this large leap of faith, you can actually come across this hidden doorway where you find that funny little guy, and inside you'll find the next stone tablet that we need. But don't get distracted. That's actually not the real treasure we're here for right now. If you head to the left, there's a secret cobweb we can actually jump on, which will take you up over towards that portal, and if you go through it... What? Look at that! The entirety of the original Pitfall is right here. And to me, this is really cool. There's no reward for beating it, there's no reward for completing it, but it's still such a cool nod, and really shows that they do appreciate the game's legacy. And I think this is a very, very cool touch. Either way, you can play a nice little round of Pitfall and, oh, there's that little guy again. Afterwards, you'll come right back out to the city of Copan, and you can continue on with your adventure. So, maneuvering the city proves to be frustrating as the game begins to introduce the ability to bounce on these stone tongues. And the moment Harry bounces on them, he becomes super sensitive to control, and overshooting your destination or overcorrecting, or just missing it entirely, becomes too easy. There are certain moments where you just need to lightly tap it as you're in the air to control yourself. Now, thankfully, they do allow for safe experimentation here. Both this and later in the level, they introduce platforms that will move out from under you and disappear. Both of these are thankfully put in environments where there is no immediate punishment for failing. If you fall, hey, you don't lose anything, just time. It's a good chance to learn the mechanics and get a hang of them, which I do appreciate. I think this is a really good mode of design, especially for something that's really awkward to deal with later on. So being able to kind of learn the timing on the stone platforms or get used to how the tongues control is very helpful. And I do greatly appreciate that. So as we're going through the ancient city, I really like its crumbling, very ruined state. It looks really nice, as I mentioned earlier with the whole art direction thing. Again, we'll go ahead and we'll just keep on going on through, and towards the end of the level, we're actually going to come across another one of these chili peppers. Now, this particular pepper is actually kind of special, because you've seen them before even in this level, where they're kind of a means for collectibles and alternate exits, but this one starts a very strange trend. A trend we'll see one other time. So let's say you go ahead and you take out that snake, use them as a rope, climb up. Immediately to the left is the next boss fight, where two jaguar statues will come to life and attack you. And hey, you can go through that fight just as God intended, climb up the rope, and get on out of here. Or you grab the chili pepper, you kill the snake, you climb up it, and very swiftly, you run careening off the edge with a mighty leap, and there, you skip the boss entirely. Congratulations. This is doable one other time, and that's fascinating in terms of design. The fact that they give the player an opportunity to completely circumvent a boss, to me, is a very interesting note of design. And I almost feel like it might have been a method for QA testers to just get through the game faster. But either way, still super interesting. With the Jaguar circumvented, we move deeper into Copan, delving into the heart of the Copan Temple. Now, the temple levels contain the most and deadliest array of traps. Most of the traps here are very hard to see and will deal damage or just kill you outright. You've got everything from spike traps, flame spouts, giant balls of fire, and you'll likely lose probably the most amount of your lives in these temples. At least to just accruing damage. I mean, most of these traps, like the spike traps, can't be avoided if you're moving at full speed. Like seriously, how am I supposed to avoid this? If I did not know ahead of time, and even in knowing ahead of time, I still hit most of these traps. Maybe I'm just not careful enough, but right here is the most annoying part of the entire stage. So, you see that switch on the right? Now, that gives a good indication that I should look around. However, the switch required is down a hidden passage on your left. And while that does open the way forward, as you climb down, you can faintly see the outline of a trapdoor. And as it turns out, there's a hidden rope hidden behind the foreground that leads to the right switch. Hitting it will open the trapdoor and actually leads to the next stone tablet. After that, as you continue down a rope, you'll eventually come to a pair of spear-toting statues and a set of trapdoors going through the trapdoor. It's lame writing, you know that? You spent 1 month to write this script? Dude, it sucks. So, eventually we'll come to a pair of spear-toting statues and a set of trapdoors, one of which is only open. And going through it will actually lead us to a switch that opens another one. Repeat this process once more, you'll make it to the last room where the temple throws one last curveball at you. What's an ancient temple without a giant rolling stone? Seriously, touching the stone is death. You will perish. So any slight mistake, you die. But once you've avoided the giant rolling stone, and if you've got enough gusto in you, you could probably make a pretty treacherous leap and get a 1-up on your way out, but once through, we can now go ahead and free to leave without a boss fight. Sadly still fatherless, we leave the temple and chart a path towards Tikal, and this starts in the Lacamule rainforest. Now, I mentioned earlier that I really liked the look of the rainforest level. I liked how lush it was and how vibrant the colors got. And here, I'm going to retract that statement. Because this level, while using the same aesthetic, it looks really dark. I understand they're going for this forest at night, but I feel there was a better way to represent this rather than paint everything dark blue and black. Like, maybe represent some strong moonlight by adding some more defined highlights, rather than having everything look so muddled. This actually is harmful, as because of this, it's hard to tell where you can leap, and it completely hides instant death mires. And after sliding on some branches, you are dropped without warning onto a boar. This level will do this to you 4 times. You have my guarantee you'll die here at least once. And here, I succumb to the exact issue I outlined earlier. Dying to a bog I couldn't see. I ran right into the damn thing. And once more, you use a hidden rope in the treetops that you can't see to get the next stone tablet, and then after that, you do promptly leave and you continue your way onto the Yaxchilan Lagoon. If I'm enunciating that right. I've never been so happy to see so many vibrant colors. Now, this lagoon doesn't have a tablet, and kind of works more as a pass-through level. However, it is notable because the stage is home of a classic Pitfall enemy. I mean, how could you not have a Pitfall game without representing the crocodile? Now, these crocs are actually significantly less threatening than they were in the Atari original, because these ones, you can stand on them, and they won't try to eat you. Some will sink into the water if you ride them too long, but at least they won't try to open their mouth and eat you. However, in one really neat set-piece moment, when you're going across the set of vines over the lagoon, they actually will jump up at you. Now, if they catch you, this will result in instant death, because they'll drag you off the vine straight into the water. But otherwise, this level is actually over as quick as it started. One of the fastest levels the game has. And other than that, on to the next destination. So, our charted course to Tikal has the fastest route to it, taking us through the, pardon me, Balakanshi. Balakanshi? Yeah. The Balakanshi mines. Through these mines. This level has us take a break from the usual platforming and actually opts for a minecart stage, having Harry jump his cart across 3 separate tracks and avoiding stopped carts indicated by the 3 lamps on the left. Occasionally, ghosts will come up from behind and pincering Harry between the carts and them. They'll charge in from the same order they appear, and while they won't kill you, they do knock Harry off balance, preventing him from being able to jump or make any other movements. And any collision here with any stopped item is death. And things speed up faster and faster as the level goes on, leaving for less and less room for error. And I kind of like how it ramps up. And actually, I'm really enjoying the upbeat background music. Now, I guess I really haven't discussed the music much in this game, have I? Well, that would mainly be due to the fact that the background music it's serviceable, and I like the direction they took with the tracks, serving more as an ambient backing to the adventure. Like, you can hear a lot of fauna, you hear chirping, you hear birds. In, like, the temples, you have, like, a drum set, but I wouldn't call many of them super memorable. There are some, like this minecart section, really digging this, but other than that, it's more of an exception rather than the rule. But anyhow, so things are getting faster and faster, and as we're dodging obstacles, dipping and dodging, eventually we're going to come to a point where things will slightly slow down, and the top and bottom tracks will light up red. When this happens, get directly to the center, because the top and bottom tracks will lead to an exploding barrel and cut off entirely. And once you've done that, you can ride straight on to Tikal. So, after the crazy cart ride, we end up in Tikal, and we end up after dark. And once more, we're subjected to a in the middle of the night kind of stage. However, the Tikal Ruins actually has a really nice way of dealing with this one rather than the forest, because the Tikal Ruins actually has it set up so there's a lot more bright blues, and I think this helps to at least starkly contrast against the really dark bogs and the instant death pits that appear here. Now, being able to easily say what's a platform and what isn't is great here, because this is also where some of the most treacherous platforming will take place. Most of the ancient city things that you saw prior, like the bouncing on the Mayan tongues, and the retractable platforms, occur here as well. Except, stakes are much higher, and if you fail here, it's death.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
Once you go to the upper side of the level, you'll find these multiple, bogs. And at first, I thought these were just instant death pits, like any other you've fallen in throughout the rest of the game. These, however, I couldn't find a way around. I couldn't find another path, I couldn't find a door, so I took a leap of faith and I leapt right in. But surprisingly, these are completely non-lethal to you, and they're actually required to go through them to progress. So after you take a chance on those mires, you'll be navigating the retracting platforms again. Now this time you really gotta pay attention to their timing, which to me always seemed like I was making them feel like they were too short, and I was jumping too early, resulting in me dying on a few number of occasions. And to some degree, I don't think I was the only one who thought that maybe the instant death pits kind of ramp in difficulty here, because in this vase hanging on the ceiling, there's a 1-up. There's a nice little golden totem that you can get to replenish a life, and every time you die, it comes back. So this ensures that no matter how much you die, you'll never run out. Oh, and real quick, before we leave this area, if you want every tablet before you leave here, jump to the left. Behind that area right there is actually a pressure plate you have to push to open up a stone door beneath the boss. And this is definitely one of the more frustrating ones I could not find on my own. I actually had to look this one up, and how was I supposed to know that was there? I took a complete... If I would not have found that it was there, I would have kept marching on, and I actually did on my first run through for this. I completely ignored it and kept moving until I realized that I missed the tablet piece. So now that we got that tablet piece, we're now marching straight into the boss arena. This one appears to be a standard Jaguar fight. However, The boss will soon show its true colors as soon as you start to wail on it, because the moment you do, he transforms into this really sick-looking jaguar warrior. And I really love the design of this boss. This actually is probably my favorite boss in the entire game. So, swapping between these forms, he'll come at you with an onslaught of attacks, ranging everything from massive slashes with his claws to throwing fire, even calling an earth-rattling lightning bolt that he'll strike into the ground and knock you over. I'll be forward. I don't really have any advice for this fight. Honestly, just knuckle down, throw a bunch of exploding stones, dodge what you can, and just do it. So earlier, I had mentioned that there were 2 bosses that could actually be skipped by using some kind of funky jumping maneuvers. This is actually the second one, although unlike the first one with the 2 jaguars, where you did it with a Mayan chili pepper, so this one will actually require you to land a very precise jump on one of the stone tongues and actually bounce up to the exit before the fight ever begins. I've come close to landing it on a few occasions, but I'll be honest, I've never actually been able to do this one. But I know it's possible. I came very close and I screwed it up right at the end. Now hot on the heels of Harry Sr.'s captor, we enter the temple at Tikal. Now this marks the most dangerous part of our journey. This stage gives absolutely no quarter and will kill us if we slip up even the slightest. This level starts off with you needing to find a hidden jump pad that'll be required to start ahead. Much like the other ropes, it's actually hidden behind the foreground. So, we move on to a dimly lit and frankly hard to see river of death that we gotta navigate along with these spike ball traps that are threatening to push us in. Now, the rolling boulder trap also returns, and this time it's got that nice little Indiana Jones moment where you run away from the boulder, and it's actually kinda nice. Not really threatening if you see it early enough, but it's pretty cool. Now only one last river of death stands between us and the final showdown. But wait, before you go, there is another stone tablet hidden in this level, and this is going to require you to make a large leap of faith knowing that there is a hidden door leading to the second to last stone tablet. Now, how would I have known there was a hidden door there? Like, seriously, there's no indication, there's no kind of hint, there's not even like a drop shadow maybe showing me that something's there. It's just you have to know, or you have to be willing to take the guess. But the problem is then you have to be willing to guess that there's something behind every piece of foreground, and that's not always true. Regardless, this level is over, and we've already got what we need. We're moving on to the final showdown. We've arrived at the Warrior Spirit's lair. The critical moment has finally come for one last confrontation, and this guy is no pushover. His attacks are slower, they're more telegraphed than prior bosses, and they deal a ton of damage. The first thing the Spirit will do is he'll advance at you until you do enough damage to drive him back. Then, once you do, he'll probably do something like this, where he gets on his knees, and he launches his fists at you from a distance. Now, the fists deal a large chunk of damage, and getting caught in this can get you into a loop where he'll continue to do this probably until either he stops or you die. Now, he's also got this stomp, which is kind of like the Jaguar War's Thunderbolt, where it'll knock you down if you don't leap, but wait a second. Did he hold that attack? Seriously, he held his attack! That asshole. This move right here takes me forever to get the hang of. So he splits himself apart and he flies into the air and then he drops on top of you from above. And then he goes in the opposite direction you're facing. This took me forever to figure this out. So if you didn't dodge this attack outright, you're certainly gonna get hit multiple times. So there's this moment where, at a portion during the fight, he's actually going to take this very strange stance where he'll draw you towards him in this really strange vortex move that I have literally written in my timestamp notes as the big suck. I don't know how to describe what he's doing, but we're getting drawn in so he can kill us. And after a very perilous fight, we've come out on top. He will relinquish the last tablet, completing the set for us. Now, with great haste, Harry Jr. is going to rush to the sacrificial slab where we'll finally meet Harry. And... They actually kept his Atari 2600 form and kept it canonically in a realistic, maybe slightly cartoonish setting. But they actually did it. He doesn't look like he's aged a day. I love this so much. This is so cool. So as Senior's standing up on that slab, he looks down at Junior and he goes, "Hey, how'd it take you so long?" And at that moment, it hit me. We went the whole way around this portion of the Mayan Empire, when in all reality, if you look at the map as a whole, but he didn't bother going the whole horseshoe route that we did. He probably just went straight south and just chained him right up. So this whole adventure took us probably a few more days than he's been chained up for. So I'm kind of impressed we got here with anything left of him at all. All Atari 2600 ass Pitfall Harry aside, with Harry Sr. saved, the game will finally show us what netting all these stone tablets will bring us. Who knows? Maybe it's a massive vault of lost treasure, or maybe we'll finally see what happened to Harry Sr.'s pet ocelot from the Lost Caverns, if anyone even really cares. But either way, we're finally gonna find out what's been hidden from us this whole time. Victory. Now take a photo to document your triumph. Huh. So that's it. Take a picture to commemorate your victory. It's certainly not what I was expecting, but actually, maybe it's a good idea. After all, I actually remember a not too distant time from now when I'd actually take pictures of my television screen when I would beat older games I was playing. Like, I first did this when I beat The Legend of Zelda for the first time. And I did this for the second Zelda game. I did this for Ninja Gaiden. I did this for Dragon Warrior. I did this for so many games that I had beaten. I have old cell phones of just full of pictures of me on this congratulations screen and this congratulatory moment of just moments I wanted to remember that I did. So maybe this reward isn't so bad. I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't play a game just to find some extra ending or find some extra, congratulatory, hey, you did it. I played because I wanted an adventure. I wanted to break up the mire and drudgery that can be everyday life. And these photos, as I kind of recall them, are reminders of good times and moments of high adventure and achievement. And I guess that's what these experiences are all about. These are experiences that impact us. They give us opportunities to feel, childlike wonder and awe. And, to that end, traveler, is why I share this. Maybe this will lead you to go on your own expedition, find your own roads, make memories, or maybe at least delight in the tales of some of mine. So as the credits roll, it's good to kind of reflect on these moments, and to think about everything we've done, to think about the adventure we've had, and has this been the best adventure? Is this the best game? Of course not. This game has a lot of problems. It's got a lot of... There's moments where it's too easy, there's moments where the difficulty spikes, there's moments where, the platforming doesn't feel very precise, and the weapons aren't always super impactful. I felt like a lot of the kit wasn't really utilized. There's 2 moments when you can hit switches with stones, but it never really takes advantage of that, and there's... Regardless, this game wasn't the finest thing out there, but that really doesn't matter. I had fun. I enjoyed this massively. This whole project of me doing this video has been a blast. I've never done anything like this, and I'm super pumped about this. Seriously. This has been such a learning experience for me, and is not something I'm soon going to forget. And I couldn't be happier about this. I also love the special thanks in a lot of these older games where it's like, oh hey, we thank the entire 2600 team, we thank the entire Mayan Empire, we'd like to thank the pizza delivery guy, Ralph the Goldfish. Rest in peace. Snoopy the dwarf hamster, and all the fellas down south. Like, this is fantastic. I love this kind of stuff. And it's really, really nice to see them kind of breaking loose a little bit, and it reminds you that people really worked on this. Real people sacrificed time to bring this to us. And that alone deserves recognition. Creating something is not easy. It never is. You've got deadlines, you've got creative block, you gotta learn a lot sometimes. And that's fascinating to me. Regardless, I want to thank you for being here. If you're watching this, thank you. And so until our paths cross again once more, dear traveler, take care, and do remember, you can do more than just stand on top of tree stumps. That doesn't even make any sense.